Chapter 1. Anya Sharma gripped the worn leather of her satchel, the late afternoon sun casting long, skeletal shadows across the sprawling facade of Blackwood Manor. It was less a manor now, more a monument to forgotten grandeur, its colonial-era architecture crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. Paint peeled in leprous flakes from ornate cornices, and ivy, thick as a man's arm, choked half-shuttered windows, giving the edifice the appearance of a cyclops peering out from a verdant shroud. This was her new assignment, to catalog a collection of ancient manuscripts, supposedly unrivaled in its obscurity, hidden within this decaying titan. A historian's dream, she had thought, a treasure trove waiting to be unearthed. The initial thrill, however, began to curdle the moment the heavy oak doors groaned shut behind her, echoing like a sepulchral sigh through the cavernous foyer. Dust motes danced in the anemic shafts of light piercing the stained glass transom, illuminating an oppressive silence that pressed in on her ears. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of old paper, stagnant water, and something else, something faintly metallic like rust but deeper, more organic, a pervasive aroma of slow decay. Her designated workspace was in the manor's forgotten wing, a labyrinth of interconnected rooms lined floor to ceiling with towering, dark wood shelves. Here, the light struggled to penetrate even the clearest panes, leaving vast sections in perpetual twilight. As she moved deeper, her awe gave way to a creeping unease. The silence here wasn't merely oppressive, it was attentive. A chill, distinct and unnatural, seemed to follow her, settling on her shoulders even as the rest of the room remained clammy and still. It was a cold spot that moved, a pocket of frigid air that defied logic, vanishing and reappearing with unsettling randomness. She paused, catalog card in hand, convinced she'd heard something. A whisper, faint and dry as rustling leaves, seemed to skitter past her ear, just beyond the reach of comprehension. Was it the settling of ancient timbers, the wind sighing through a broken pane, or something else entirely? The pervasive scent of decay intensified in this wing, not just old paper now, but something almost animalistic, like drying blood or damp earth mixed with an unsettling sweetness. Anya tried to rationalize it away, her historian's mind seeking logical explanations for every anomaly. But the whispers persisted, faint, almost subconscious, weaving themselves into the oppressive quiet. This house, she realized with a growing dread, held more than just dust and old stories. It felt alive, watching, waiting. Chapter 2. Anya returned to her work the next morning, but the unease of the previous day had solidified into a gnawing apprehension. The cold spots were no longer fleeting oddities. They lingered, pockets of icy air that bit at her skin, raising gooseflesh. The whispers seemed to coil around her, a phantom chorus of dry, sibilant sounds that tugged at the edges of her perception, just out of reach. She tried to immerse herself in the task, cataloging an array of discolored ledgers and crumbling diaries, hoping the methodical nature of her work would ground her. She unearthed a series of leather-bound journals, their pages brittle and stained, belonging to a previous owner, an Archibald Thorne. His ornate, spidery script documented not scholarly pursuits, but a chilling descent into depravity. Thorne detailed his acquisition of the manor, the rich land, and the indigenous community he deemed savages. His entries began as a patronizing record of their customs, quickly morphing into a gruesome chronicle of their exploitation and his unfathomable cruelties. He described their forced labor, the theft of their sacred artifacts, and the corrective measures he took against any defiance. Anya's fingers trembled as she read Thorne's increasingly deranged accounts. He wrote of their desperate attempts to reclaim their land, their pleas turning to ancient invocations, their rituals to protect what was left. One chilling entry detailed a final, desperate binding ritual performed by the tribal elders, an act of profound power meant to tether something ancient, something vengeful, to the very land Thorne coveted. It was a curse, a promise of retribution etched not in words, but in blood and earth. Thorne dismissed it as primitive superstition, yet his later entries betrayed a growing paranoia, a terror of unseen eyes and creeping shadows. As she absorbed the horrifying narrative, a heavy tome on an upper shelf shuddered, then inexplicably pitched forward, crashing to the floor with a resonant thud that echoed through the oppressive silence. Anya flinched, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked up, but there was nothing, no vibration, no explanation. A moment later, a shadow in her peripheral vision elongated, stretched, then snapped back, too fluid, too quick to be real. And then from the deeper, darker recesses of the wing came a sound. A dry, guttural click like chitin scraping on stone, followed by another, closer this time, and then a series of rapid, scuttling repetitions. It confirmed her growing dread. This house was not merely haunted by history, it was actively alive, a monstrous entity stirring from its long, terrible slumber. Chapter 3. Anya's heart hammered. The clicks receded, then returned, closer, faster, a predatory rhythm echoing in the vast, dust-choked space. The air grew heavy, thick with a scent not just of decay, but of something ancient, something that had been starved for centuries. Driven by a desperate need for answers, she scanned the shelves, no longer looking for history but for an escape from it. Her gaze snagged on a section filled with artifacts distinct from Thorne's colonial papers. Rolls of aged parchment wrapped in fibrous bark, clay tablets, and a single, leather-bound book, its cover etched with symbols she recognized from the few anthropological texts in Thorne's library describing the indigenous tribes. She pulled it free, its weight surprisingly light. Inside, the script was unfamiliar, yet a series of intricate, horrifying illustrations needed no translation. They depicted a being of pure shadow and bone, a gaunt, emaciated form with limbs like gnarled branches, ending in sharpened talons. Its head was a skull, its eye sockets burning with embers. The text, though unreadable, was interspersed with diagrams detailing the tribe's binding ritual, and more importantly, the aftermath. The illustrations chronicled the entity's creation, its slow growth, fueled by suffering, by the very pain Thorne had inflicted. This was the Chhaya-Rakshas, the shadow demon, a monstrous consequence of his heinous acts, born from a desperate curse. A sudden sharp crack splintered the silence behind her. Anya spun, her breath catching. What had been a trick of light, a fleeting shadow, solidified. It rose from the floor, a skeletal apparition of immense height, its many limbs unfolding from its back like the fractured wings of a grotesque insect. The eyes, twin pits of smoldering ruby, fixed on her. The clicking sound now erupted from its throat, a wet, chitinous chorus of hunger. It took a single, lurching step, then another, its movements strangely disjointed, yet terrifyingly swift. Panic seized Anya. The archive of whispering bones had ceased to be a place of study. It was a hunting ground, and she was the prey. She bolted, weaving frantically between towering stacks, the creature's impossible speed closing the distance with each guttural click. Its presence chilled the very air, stealing oxygen from her lungs. She could feel its gaze on her back, a burning weight. A hand, no, a talon lashed out, missing her by inches, scoring deep gouges into an antique mahogany shelf. Books cascaded around her as she ducked, scrambling further into the maze of forgotten knowledge, the Chhaya-Rakshas, a relentless, ravenous shadow at her heels. The horror was no longer an idea, but a visceral reality. Chapter 4. Anya plunged into the gloom, a sudden, searing pain blooming across her shoulder as she collided with a sturdy, iron-bound bookshelf. The Chhaya-Rakshas had moved with impossible speed, its talons grazing her, tearing through her jacket and skin. Blood welled, warm and sticky, a stark reminder of the fragile line between observer and victim. She didn't dare look back, instead scrambling through a narrow gap, a desperate instinct guiding her deeper into the archive's forgotten passages. The clicking, the sound of splintering wood, confirmed the creature's relentless pursuit. Her mind, despite the terror, raced. The manuscript, the brutal illustrations of Thorne, the binding ritual, the suffering, it all clicked into place. This wasn't just a monster, it was the distilled essence of the manor's sin, a historical curse given grotesque form. It fed on the residual pain, the lingering echoes of cruelty woven into the very fabric of the house. To destroy it, she couldn't simply escape. She had to sever its connection to its source. Its power was rooted here, in the very foundation of the cursed edifice. A faint symbol, etched into the margin of one of the tribal texts she'd skimmed earlier, flashed in her memory. A serpentine knot encircling a fractured glyph pointing downwards. The cellars. Thorne's journals had hinted at a root chamber, a place of unspeakable rituals. Driven by a grim clarity, Anya veered sharply, finding a hidden access panel disguised as a section of the wall. She forced it open, revealing a precipitous, dust-choked staircase plunging into utter darkness. The cold emanating from below was absolute, ancient, a predatory void. The descent was a nightmare of creaking wood and echoing silence, broken only by her ragged breathing. At the bottom, the air hung heavy with the stench of stagnant water and something metallic, something old and terrible. Her flashlight beam cut through the black, revealing a cavernous space. In the center, half submerged in a shallow pool of murky liquid, stood a stone altar. It was crudely carved, its surface scarred with ancient defilements, dried blood crusting its edges. Desecrated. This was the heart of it, the convergence point of the manor's malevolence. Anya's hands trembled, but her resolve hardened. She knew what had to be done. Recalling fragmented phrases, remembered diagrams from the tribal texts, she began to gather what she could, discarded remnants of clay pots, a few dried herbs clinging to the damp walls, a shard of obsidian from a broken tool. She had to weave a new tapestry, a counter-ritual, before the creature found her again. The clicking was growing louder, echoing from the stairwell. It was coming. Chapter 5. The clicking coalesced into a chittering symphony of dread as the creature descended, a multi-limbed nightmare unfurling from the darkness. Its burning eyes locked onto Anya, its gaunt form seeming to swell with the cellar's ancient malice. A gust of fetid air slammed into her, thick with the scent of grave dust and iron. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the cavernous space as one of its elongated limbs, tipped with a razor-sharp claw, lashed out, tearing a ragged line across her arm. Pain flared, hot and immediate, but she gritted her teeth, refusing to break her focus. The obsidian shard, a piece of ancient protection, felt cold and smooth in her trembling hand. She smeared her own blood along its jagged edge, muttering the tribal phrases she barely understood, her voice raw and desperate. The Chhaya-Rakshas shrieked, a sound that vibrated through her bones, trying to dislodge her sanity. It lunged again, its shadowy form flickering, almost ethereal, then solidifying with terrifying speed. Anya threw the handful of dried herbs into the murky water surrounding the altar, watching them dissolve into swirling motes of light. The creature recoiled for a split second, its eyes narrowing. "No," Anya choked out, her gaze fixed on the altar, on the fragmented glyph she had to complete. The creature closed the distance, its other limbs scrabbling against the damp stone floor, generating a grating cacophony. She felt the chill of its breath on her neck, the phantom touch of countless skeletal fingers reaching, tearing at her will. It wasn't just physical, it was a psychic assault, feeding on her fear, twisting her memories into grotesque visions. Her father's face, contorted in terror, flashed before her eyes. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, Anya slammed the bloodied obsidian shard into the central crack of the altar. A blinding flash erupted, followed by a resonant boom that shook the very foundations of the manor. The Chhaya-Rakshas shrieked, a sound of pure agony and impotent rage, its form dissolving, then snapping back into a contorted, writhing mass. Cracks spiderwebbed across the altar stone, and from them tendrils of luminous energy snaked out, coiling around the creature. It bucked and thrashed, its burning eyes wide with a dying light, before it was slowly, inexorably pulled back into the fissure, sealed within the desecrated heart of its origin. Silence fell, absolute and suffocating. Anya stood trembling, her body aching, her mind scarred. The manor seemed to sigh around her, a lingering presence that would never truly depart. She stumbled towards the stairwell, her escape a blur of instinct and sheer will. Outside, the morning sky was a pale, indifferent gray, but the shadow of the manor and the terror within would forever cling to her.